Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 12th All India Conference of China Studies. Kindly settle down quickly. We'll begin within a minute. Yes. May I request some of the speakers to take the front chairs, please? Unless, of course, someone has a problem with walking down. Okay. Thank you and welcome everyone once again to the All India Conference of China Studies. May I request all the dignitaries on the stage to begin the conference by lighting of the lamp here as part of the conference. May I now request Ambassador Kanta, Director AICCS Delhi, to deliver the welcome remarks, please. Sir.
Professor C. Rajkumar, Vice Chancellor, O.P. Jindal Global University. Professor Mahendrapal Singh, Chair Professor, Center for Comparative Law, National Law University, Delhi. Professor Srimati Chakraborty, Vice Chairperson, Institute of Chinese Studies and convener of 12th All India Conference of China Studies. Professor Y.S.R. Murthy, Registrar of O.P. Jindal Global University. Dr. Avinash Kodbole, co-convener of 12th AICCS. Senior academics and young scholars present here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me, first of all, welcome all of you to the 12th edition of All India Conference on China Studies, the 12th AICCS, being co-hosted by the Institute of Chinese Studies, ICS, and O.P. Jindal Global University, JGU. For us, it's a very special gathering of China scholars, which is convened once every year. It started way back in 2008, relatively modest beginning at that time, but over the years it has grown in stature, grown in its complexity, and now it's regular national level 3-day conference on the subject of China as in India. It's a major project of my institute, ICS, but what makes it really special is the fact that it's a traveling conference, which is organized in partnership with a leading university or academic institution annually, and it travels to different parts of the country with the objective of promoting China studies and strengthening academic and research linkages among China scholars on a pan-national basis. I believe Sonepat is the 11th city or town hosting the AICCS. And this 12th AICCS is truly special for us, as we at the ICS are commemorating 50 years of the Institute of China Studies and its precursor, the China Study Group. It has been, over the last 5 decades, a remarkable journey. During this period, the ICS has gradually carved out a niche for itself as a vibrant research institute committed to promoting interdisciplinary research on China and East Asia, as a meaningful platform to generate public discourse on this region of immense significance to us in India, as an active forum which brings together Chinese scholars as a catalyst to nurture China studies in India and to contribute to capacity building. And it gives us great satisfaction that the Wednesday seminar, which started way back in 1969, has met without interruption since then. And the fact that our flagship journal, China Report, which we're just talking about in Vice Chancellor's office, is now in the fifth year of its publication. And we are really honored, privileged, and delighted that this 12th very special edition of AICCS is being held in partnership with Jindal Global University, JGU. I'm aware that like ICS, for JGU too, it's a milestone year because it's celebrating 10 years of excellence in institution building. Within this short period of time, it has achieved a lot. It has not only emerged as a leading academic institution in the country, but it's one which has acquired a truly global character in terms of its faculty, in terms of student body, and most importantly, in terms of its academic excellence. The ICS is indeed privileged to partner with JGU to organize the 12th AICCS. Well, JGU has distinguished itself in many areas, but one particular strength of the university is its School of Law. It's therefore appropriate that law governance society in China is a special theme of this conference. And we are very happy that for holding this conference, we are working very closely with the Center for India-China Studies, which had just marked its 5th anniversary. I would like to put on record our deep appreciation for the very dynamic leadership of Professor C. Rajkumar, who has been personally engaged in organizing this conference. I would also like to thank Registrar Professor Y.S.R. Murthy and other senior colleagues from JGU who have been working on this conference. Most importantly, I would like to thank Dr. Avinash Godbole, who is co-convener of this conference. Avinash and other friends from JGU have worked very closely with my colleagues, most importantly, Professor Srimati Chakraborty, convener of the conference, Dr. P.K. Anand, and other young friends who have been working to see that together we ensure that it's a very fruitful conference that we organize over the next 3 days. Friends, I would like to applaud their meticulous planning, keen enthusiasm, and quiet efficiency. Special thank you to student volunteers of OP Jindal Global University. We take particular pride in one aspect of the AICCS, and that aspect I would like to highlight is that it provides a forum for young scholars from different parts of the country who are invited to present their papers. We go through a very rigorous selection process, and I'm happy that like in the previous years, we had excellent response this year as well. There's another aspect of the conference I would like to highlight, and this is the fact that we make special efforts to ensure that this conference lives up to its name, All India Conference of China Studies. So we try to see that it has an all-Indian representative character. I'm very happy to point out that this year we have participation from 24 institutions from all over the country at this conference. Representatives from these institutions will be presenting papers at the conference and speaking during proceedings of the conference today, tomorrow, and day after. Apart from the thematic sessions, where our young scholars will present papers, we have organized special panels on several themes, including ICS at 50, since we are marking the 50th anniversary of the institution, comparing India and China in global affairs, geopolitics of Himalayan river, the Brahmaputra, the present state of India-China relations, teaching China and India, security and geopolitics narratives in East Asia, and fieldwork experience in China studies. And we are truly honored and privileged that this evening, Shri V. Muralidharan, Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs, will deliver a special address. And the fact that We have with us Professor Mahendrapal Singh, a person of with a truly impressive academic record and resume, who will be delivering keynote address at the inaugural session this morning. Friends, as we commence our deliberations today, we must remind ourselves how important it is to understand correctly what's happening in China and its actions abroad, adopting an evidence-based approach and avoiding stereotypes. With a new generation Chinese scholars actively contributing, we are perhaps at a turning point in the development of China studies in India, yet we are conscious of the huge deficit that confronts us, the challenges that face us. This makes this conference and our future endeavors to study China so necessary. This is because we must have a nuanced appreciation of China as the largest neighbor, as a country with which we have a complex relationship. China is a leading strategic challenge for us in India, and simultaneously, it's a source of great opportunities for our country. The rise of China is the most important geopolitical development in the past quarter century, but China is also a country at an inflection point, economically, politically, diplomatically, and militarily. It's undergoing multiple transitions with uncertain outcomes. Therefore, we must have a holistic understanding of history, culture, society, economy, politics, and international relations with China, and of India-China relations. We must continue to forge an Indian perspective of China studies, and this is something, an objective we try to advance at the AICCS. Let me, in conclusion, welcome all speakers, panelists, and discussants who will share their wisdom and knowledge at various panels. I would like to especially welcome young scholars who have traveled from different parts of the country to present their papers at the conference. I welcome all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I request Professor C. Rajkumar to deliver the opening remarks, please.
A very good morning to all of you. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the distinguished participants and speakers, and indeed the entire set of institution builders at the Institute of Chinese Studies, to OP Jindal Global University, and also to the 12th All India Conference of China Studies. I want to particularly recognize the presence and indeed thank Ambassador Ashok Kanta for his leadership as director of ICS when he mooted the idea of such a partnership almost a year ago, and we were very excited about the possibility of doing something together, not only because of the importance of the theme, but also the importance of we in India understanding China better. I also want to recognize the presence of Professor Srimati Chakraborty, the Vice Chairperson of ICS and the convener of the 14th AICCS, for her leadership, but also her scholarship and her tireless commitment and dedication to the cause of Chinese studies in India. In some ways, this conference, the brainchild and also the intellectual framework for the conference was led by her, and also many other individuals who are present here today. So I want to thank both of them. I also want to thank all the distinguished former ambassadors who are present here, the scholars, also the many graduate students, but also many researchers who have been working in the field of China studies for their participation in this conference. I want to thank my colleague, Dr. Avinash Goodbol, but also my colleague at the Center for India-China Studies, its director, Professor Wenjuan Shang, and all the deans of the schools of our university, our registrar and others who have contributed to the conference planning. I'm particularly delighted to welcome back my mentor, Professor Mahendrapal Singh, former Vice Chancellor at NUJS Calcutta, former Dean of the Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. I don't know how many of you know this, but Professor MP Singh has spent significant different periods of time studying comparative law in different parts of the world. He's a world-renowned expert on German administrative law, but also very keenly studied civil law systems, spent visiting professorships at, besides Germany and Japan, but also has extensively traveled in China and spent a lot of time in Hong Kong. So there are, if there is anybody in the world who is more suited to look at the theme of law, governance and society from a Chinese, but also from an Indian and comparative perspective, is indeed Professor M.P. Singh. So I'm grateful to him for his distinguished presence here. I'm going to keep it short. I'll quickly introduce the university, but also briefly reflect about the theme itself. For those of you who have come here for the first time, I want you to look around and walk around. This is a relatively new university set up through a philanthropic initiative of our founding benefactor, Mr. Naveen Jindal. I had the privilege to meet him in the year 2006 and 7, spent a year persuading him to do 3 things. 1, to make a substantial financial commitment. 2nd, to do it in a not-for-profit manner. And 3rd, to let me have the academic freedom and autonomy and independence to build a world-class university in India. By late 2007, Mr. Jindal agreed to all of that and invited me to move to India from Hong Kong in early 2008. From 2008 onwards, we began the process of institution building from scratch, land acquisition, formulation of curriculum, course structure, program development, faculty recruitment plan, student admissions process, hiring of architects, construction engineers, contractors, and of course, faculty members, administrative staff, and the entire institutional imagination was evolved. We engaged with the government of Haryana, went through a process of 20+ committees, which was involved in the approval process, and ultimately on 27th January 2009, the government of Haryana passed the legislation to establish the first private university in the state of Haryana, O.P. Jindal Global University. Soon after, I was appointed the first Vice Chancellor of the university, and we began the process of construction of campus, recruitment of faculty, and admission of students. As promised to Mr. Jindal, on 30th September 2009, we began the first academic session of the first school of the university, Jindal Global Law School, with only 100 students and 10 faculty members. We never looked back since then. In 2010, we started the Jindal Global Business School. In 2011, the Jindal School of International Affairs. In 2012, the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. In 2013, the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities. In 2016, the Jindal School of Journalism and Communication. In 2017, the Jindal School of Art and Architecture. And in 2018, we set up the 8th school of the university, Jindal School of Banking and Finance. And just 2 days ago, we announced the establishment of the 9th school of the university, the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability, and also announced the appointment of its founding dean, Professor Armin Rosenkrantz, who has accepted to become the founding dean of the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability. These 10 years have been quite inspiring and learning experience for us. I won't bore you with the full details, but I'll say that there are 3 important milestones that we have reached in the last 10 years. First, we were accredited by the National Accreditation Assessment Council and was given the NAC A grade, which is the highest grade at that time, and we received that. Second, we broke into the international rankings under the QS World University Rankings. Among the top 1,000 universities in the world, there are only 24 Indian universities among the top 1,000 in the QS World Rankings. There are 6 of them are private and 18 are public, and we are one among them. We are also the youngest university in India and the youngest university in the entire world to have broken into the international rankings and being the top 1,000. But most importantly, which we are very proud of, is that we are the only non-STEM and non-medicine university as well. And that's a quite unique distinction. And most importantly, and most recently, a few weeks ago, the government of India has declared us as an institution of eminence. Only 10 public and 10 private universities in India have been declared so. And we are the only non-STEM and non-medicine university in the entire list of 10 public and 10 private to be declared as an institution of eminence. Now this journey that has been covered in the last 10 years has been possible because of the extraordinary contribution of our faculty members, the extraordinary contribution of our students, and indeed the huge trust and faith that has been reposed on our institution by all our stakeholders, including parents, but also the wider community. One of the things that relates to this conference, I think, is very important to be mentioned. Early on, we began the process of building a global university. And for us to be a global university means several things. Most importantly, we need to create a global imagination of institution. That requires a global curriculum, a global course structure, a global faculty, a global research agenda, all of which promoting global interaction. And so these 5 features of global institution building was part of our vision and continue to shape our mission. First, we hired global faculty. 18% of our full-time faculty members are non-Indian nationals recruited from 32 different countries in the world and regions in the world. And the rest of the faculty members are also people who have had strong engagement with the world, either through research or through academic engagement or studies or work. A related aspect of that global engagement is to be able to build substantive partnerships with over 250 universities spread across 55 different countries and regions in the world. These partnerships have culminated in research, but also student-level interaction as well as faculty engagement. The second is our commitment to research. We maintain a 1:10 faculty-student ratio. We've established the 55 research centers and the 3 research and capacity building institutes which foster the research agenda. Our faculty members have been quite active in the last decade. We have produced over 3,000 publications, and hence our citation as well as our larger presence in the research domain has been very strong. The third is our strong commitment to public service. We are a private university deeply committed to public service. Over 50% of our students are on scholarship. We strongly recognize the fact that affordability and opportunity to study at this university should not be deprived for anyone, but because of their ability to pay. And from day one, we have created an institutional ecosystem whereby students who can't afford are given scholarship, and hundreds of students have been benefited by this framework from day one. The fourth is our strong commitment to what we call building an intellectually vibrant environment through conferences and lectures like what we are doing today. And the fifth is what we do through executive education. I want to say that our engagement with China was from the very beginning. I had the privilege to work in Hong Kong and travel across China. When many years ago, when this university was just a dream for me personally, I had the privilege to travel across China, and I was fascinated by what the Chinese were doing. As we know, China lost several decades to the Cultural Revolution, but the leading Chinese universities ended up very quickly creating new imagination for higher education, and fundamental reforms in higher education were initiated, and quite rapidly China demonstrated that in their institutions. Having been to these universities across China, I was quite conscious of the extraordinary developments that have taken place in China and was inspired by that. When we built our institution here and when we started building collaborations, we clearly had China in mind, and very soon after, nearly 5 years ago, we set up the Center for India-China Studies, recruited many individuals, including Chinese professors, into the faculty. One such individual is the director of the center, Professor Wenjuan Shang, but there are many others. I want to mention that we are very conscious of creating an academic and institutional environment that is inclusive, that is able to speak truth to power, and that at times will make people unhappy. And that's part of what a university ought to be doing. So our engagement with China and Greater China is comprehensive. While we work with many Chinese universities across China, we also have partnerships in Hong Kong. We work very closely with Taiwan and Taiwanese universities. And of course, as if all of that is not good enough, we train the Tibetan government officials here on campus. We are very conscious of building an inclusive academic and institutional environment that does not hesitate to engage with Chinese imagination in its broadest manifestation. One of the things that we have learned through that process is indeed a lot of admiration and respect for what China has done, and our interactions with Chinese universities, our substantive partnerships in which over 25 of our faculty members teach in Chinese universities, our ability to host Chinese professors here, as Ambassador Kanta mentioned, it has also helped many of our faculty members and hopefully students to overcome the the natural, let's say, prejudices and biases born out of historical context relating to China. I think it is only fair to say that just as you cannot pass judgments about India easily, you also cannot pass judgments about China. These are complex, diverse, old historical civilizations where nuanced approach towards understanding of these societies are critical. And unfortunately, most of the time, the discourse that happens outside university environments are not necessarily rigorous enough. So the 12th All India Conference of China Studies and the Institute of China Studies and our own Center for India-China Studies, but also others who work in this field are setting a very important example of having a more nuanced understanding relating to China and also relating to India. The theme of law, governance, and society in China this conference could not have organized in a more opportune moment. All over the world, the things we have assumed which will protect and build a rule of law society are indeed under challenge. The last few weeks, I have been giving lectures around the country on a theme called changing the world through law. And one of the things that I have discovered through that talk is that how much law and legal institutions, including democratically established institutions in different parts of the world, influence and impact the aspiration to build a rule of law society. And arguably, people have said that democracy as a form of government is one of the best ways by which we can indeed check abuses of power, including threats to the rule of law. Now, when you look at China much more closely, while it is easy to make an argument that the Chinese aspects of governance does not, currently at least augur our own understanding of what democracy should be, but the more deeper analysis of what is happening in China will also enable us to think about how Chinese government takes into account people's aspirations and also people's concerns when it comes to governing that society. To what extent law as a form of social institution is impacting Chinese governance and indeed impacting Chinese society are more complex issues than making a judgment that China is not a democracy and India is one. In fact, one of the questions that one of the students asked in these lectures traveling across India, and that was a powerful question, that the question that the student asked was, what do we do when democratically elected governments make serious mistakes, and what are the checks we have? And clearly, that was a question far more directed to the United States of America, where even democratically elected governments are facing serious threats of implementation of rule of law. But we could ask that question for many countries in Europe, but maybe in India as well. So the question that we have for us, and the way we probably think about China, is that what are the checks and balances that societies can have to implement, to enforce the rule of law, with a view to improving the quality of governance, which ultimately impacts the lives of people, even when different forms of governments are in place. While we accept the fact that democracy as a form of government is the best possible checks and balances for effective governance, are there other ways by which we can still enforce the rule of law without it becoming authoritarian? Are there other ways of taking into account the aspirations of people? Are there other ways by which we can think about governance models that can strengthen the need for transparency and accountability of the people who are, governing? These are fundamental issues that the conference hopes to address. And I would like to once again, welcome all of you as delegates, speakers, chairs, and indeed participants of this conference. We are very delighted to host this conference, and I sincerely hope all of you will have a wonderful time. We have taken extraordinary effort to make the conference successful, including reducing the level of air pollution in Sonepat, and hopefully you will enjoy the next 2 days. Thank you.
May I now request Professor Chakraborty to deliver the convener's remarks, please.
Honorable Vice Chancellor of Jindal Global University, Professor Rajkumar, our keynote speaker, Professor Mahendrapal Singh, ICS Director, Ambassador Ashok Kant, Registrar of Jindal Global University, Professor Y.S.R. Murthy, co-convener of this conference, Dr. Avinash Godbole, distinguished scholars, distinguished ambassadors, students and friends. It is a matter of great happiness for me to be here as the convener of the 12th All India Conference for China Studies. We are indeed very fortunate to have as our partners Jindal Global University, and indeed extremely grateful to you, Mr. Vice Chancellor, your staff and students who have contributed immensely in the organization of this event. As in each year, we have a theme for this AICCS, and as you know, it is Law, Governance and Society in China, for which we have 4 full sessions and more than 20 papers to be presented mainly by young emerging scholars. The best paper will be eligible for the Meera Sinha Bhattacharya Award. Professor Meera Sinha Bhattacharya was a foreign policy expert who taught for 25 years in the University of Delhi. I was very fortunate to be her student. And she also had close association with ICS. She was its director for some 3 years, and also she was the editor of the ICS flagship journal, China Report. We also have 7 special panels where older scholars, where more experienced scholars will be speaking. Our main aim is to hold the AICCS is to disseminate China studies all over the country. In fact, the first 2 years the AICCS was held in Delhi, but since 2010 we have been partnering with other universities to hold it in different parts of the country. In 2010 we had our conference with Jadavpur University. Then in 2011, we partnered with Hyderabad University. 2012, it was IIM Kozhikode. 2013, it was IIM Kozhikode. 2014, Sikkim University. 2015, BHU. 2016, it was Mumbai University. 2017, Goa University. And 2018, last year, we had Christ University in Bangalore partnering with us. And it is our hope that this event will be academically rewarding for everybody who participates. And I welcome you all to the 12th AICCS. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. May I now request Professor Dr. Mahendrapal Singh to deliver the keynote address, please.
Vice Chancellor Rajkumar, Ambassador Ashok Kant, Professor Srimati Chakraborty, Registrar Y.S. Murthy, friends and colleagues in front of me, some of them very senior, including Professor Patricia Oberoi and Manoranjan Mahanti, but the younger ones also, some familiar faces. It's a great honor that to such a grand conference, I have been given the honor of reading out the keynote address to you people. As a matter of fact, I am not China studies expert. My connection with China, of course, has been in terms of being a non-resident visiting professor at Renmin University in Beijing for 3 years, as well as a student who came for his PhD when I was at NUJS Calcutta. Of course, as a student of comparative law, we also discuss China, its law and society, not that much of society as much of law. Since I have been asked to take this responsibility, I have noted down few points which I would like to read out to you people. China shares with India antiquity of an unbroken living civilization from the ancient times until this day. While India has kept its doors open to receive people from all directions beyond its borders and has become a phenomenally diverse society, China has by and large maintained its exclusivity. Therefore, China has escaped the kind and amount of multiplicity or plurality of cultures, religions, customary practices, languages, races, communities, and many more that exist in India. Therefore, in spite of being territorially larger than India, China has by and large maintained its exclusivity and uniformity in most, if not all, these and other matters. That uniformity and exclusivity of society in China is also reflected and sustained by uniqueness of its legal system, including its constitution and the system of governance, also in its two special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. The new order and constitution making. As the subject matter of our conference is confined to the current position of law, governance, and society, we need not go into the history of 3 millennia or more of China, which caused a break from the past in all these matters by the revolution in 1949 that established the People's Republic of China, replacing all the previous arrangements. Soon after the success of revolution, a provisional common program was made in 1949, which worked as a substitute for constitution. It is only in 1954 that the first constitution based on revolutionary ideology was introduced. It was replaced by another constitution in 1975 and yet another in 1978 after the death of the revolutionary leader Mao Zedong in 1976 and the purge of the Gang of Four. The 1978 Constitution was also revised in 1979 and again in 1980 until it was completely replaced by the current Constitution in 1982. Unlike most of the current constitutions around the world that are made by the people's representatives, all the PRC constitutions were made by the National People's Council, which is the highest constitutional body in the People's Republic of China. Credit goes to Deng Xiaoping for giving the last 4 constitutions of PRC, out of which, in the preparation of the draft of the 1982 Constitution, he also invited and involved legal scholars and also solicited the opinions and comments from society at large before its promulgation by the NPC on 4th of December, which is also observed as the Constitution Day in People's Republic of China. That constitution continues to be the current Constitution of China with some changes in 1999 and 2004. The Constitution is the supreme law of People's Republic of China, and except to the extent of recognizing the leadership and dominance of Chinese Communist Party, it comes closer to the other constitutions in the recognition of constitutionalism. It introduces elections at the national and local levels, as well as guarantees fundamental rights to all citizens, along with the machinery for their enforcement. Like the Constitution of India, it also provides for the fundamental duties of the citizens. By amendments in 2004, the Constitution also respects and protects human rights and private property. It is because of these ideological changes in its constitution that besides others, China has acquired world leadership in economic and political matters. But as observed above, in matters of establishing constitutionalism and the rule of law, as it is generally recognized and understood in the rest of the world, China has yet to travel a long way. The conference is also concerned with the law governance and society under this new constitutional regime in China. The rule of law as principle of governance. Just as the founding of law of a country, Constitution is expected to have the quality of constitutionalism. It must also have an overlapping principle of rule of law. To some extent, the concept of rule of law overlaps with the concept of constitutionalism and is even more varied than the concept of constitutionalism. In simplest terms, while constitutionalism is the negation of exercise of arbitrary powers on the part of the state, the rule of law requires the state and its organs to exercise their powers vis-à-vis its citizens only in accordance with law, because a citizen is supposed to have certain rights as a human being which the state is not authorized to take away or interfere in the absence of law that justifies such taking away or interference. Even the validity of the law is subject to the limits of law-making power, which may be questioned in the courts of law. Famously, Professor A.V. Dicey discussed the rule of law as one of the three characteristics of the Constitution of England, within which he covered the whole Constitution of England. Although I have mentioned above that slowly the element of the rule of law, along with the element of constitutionalism, is becoming a part of China's current constitution, it is still to travel a long way, because an aggrieved individual cannot yet claim remedy in courts against the arbitrary action of the state, particularly taken under a legislation or law. To some extent, judicial remedy has been provided against an administrative action taken in violation of law, but not against a legislation that violates the Constitution. Some reliance was placed on the Constitution only in the Chi Yuling case, after which the courts have never dared to follow that case, what to say of its expansion. The concept note of the conference says, when President Xi Jinping took the power, his administration emphasized the term ruling the country according to law, which we may phrase as rule of law with Chinese characteristics. In October 2014, the 18th Party Congress of the Communist Party had the fourth plenary only on the theme of how to build the rule of law with Chinese characteristics, which is unprecedented in the Communist Party of China history, China's history. The decision of the CPC Central Committee on major issues pertaining to comprehensively promoting the rule of law was released after the fourth plenum, which was treated as the blueprint for the last 4 years of law-based governance building. This is what the conference note says. However, the political leaders and some of the Chinese scholars also claim that the rule of law has become as much part of the Chinese legal system as of the Western legal systems. They rely on the Chinese character of rule of law as fuzzy, which has become ubiquitous among the Chinese people and scholars. Reliance is placed on Xi Jinping's foregoing 2014 statement as well as on commitment to rule of law shown by him by taking oath as president by the Constitution, which implies his commitment to the rule of law. However, in view of unrestricted powers of the party exercised by the high office holders like the president or secretary, it remains doubtful whether it meets the standard of rule of law as understood and practiced in the West, where the courts have the power to invalidate unconstitutional laws and administrative acts of the highest legislative and executive bodies. However, the fact that the steps are being slowly taken in the direction of questioning the actions of highest lawmaking and executive bodies must be appreciated in the light of the socialist background and claims of the country and its governance. There are Chinese legal scholars like Eric Lee who find the element of rule of law missing in all societies since Aristotle's time until now. They also claim that the concept of rule of law has, however, been discussed as much in China as in other societies ever since the days of Confucius. In a Facebook statement, which Avinash and our colleague here, they sent to me, in a Facebook statement of only yesterday, it is asserted that China will work to uphold and improve the system of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics and improve the party's capacity for law-based governance and law-based exercising of state power, according to a decision of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, which is the highest body. Thus, even if China's version of rule of law does not match with its version in the West, it seems to be moving in that direction consistent with its socialist foundations that require equitable distribution of national wealth among all its citizens. Then lastly, I talk of Chinese society as part of the theme of the conference. My understanding of Chinese society is even lesser than of its laws and constitutional system. In view of a few visits to China, initially as honorary visiting professor at Renmin University for 3 years, and later for some lectures and interactions with legal scholars in different age groups, as well as from the writings of Confucius, I have realized that whether there is or is not such a stratification in different sections of the society as in India, people in general give special high respect and consideration to their elders or seniors. I am also not sure of class divisions in China, but it seems that in line with the teachings of Confucius, the leadership and its training is given only to persons of higher or well-off sections of the society. In course of time, that must have led to the birth of hereditary succession, as was in the case of rulers in China. These characteristics of the society are not consistent with the socialist ideology of the current regime, yet they persist and the people seem to have reconciled with them. In public law or life in the streets and markets, people seem to be moving around and interacting freely, maintaining decency and discipline. In response to my query regarding the disciplined freedom with which the people were roaming with all sorts of offers of service in marketplaces, my young colleague, who initially came as a research student to National Law University of Juridical Sciences, Calcutta, during my days at that university, responded that China is a free society to do and express anything so long as one does not indulge in politics. These and similar other experiences in respect of the Chinese people in general supports the unquestioned allegiance of the common people towards their leaders and their policies and actions taken in pursuance of them. I do not want to make any remarks in respect of society in China, which I have never studied systematically. Therefore, I leave it for the analysis of those who have studied it systematically and thoroughly. With these few remarks on the theme of the conference, I leave its themes to be explored by the experts who are participating in the conference. I hope they will not only confine to the exploration of the themes of the conference, but also they will suggest the ways and means by which the goals of constitutionalism and the rule of law are better and effectively realized in China or any society for that matter. Let me now seek your permission to stop after expressing my sincere gratitude to you for honoring me with the position of keynote speaker, as well as for listening to me with utmost patience and attention. Namaskar and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor M.P. Singh, for unpacking the conference theme so well, and it leaves us a lot of ideas to discuss in the next 2.5 days. May I now request Professor Sriraj Kumar to kindly felicitate our keynote speaker for his wonderful speech and his presence at the conference, please. No, that one is. So, that one first, please. Just move on. Thank you, sir. Professor Rajkumar, can I request you to please felicitate Mr. Kanta?
Give another one too, so we have to create one for you.
And Professor Chakraborty, please. Thank you, everyone. With this, we will conclude this session. May I request all the paper presenters, invited guests, to be come up on the stage? I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm just too many things. May I request Professor Murthy to deliver the concluding remarks? I'm so sorry, sir.
Distinguished guests on the dais, ambassadors, and participants from various institutions across the country, including DU, JNU, and Shivnadar University, and dear students. It is said that 21st century will be Asia's century, according to some experts. In fact, China and India are going to be leading the world economic development in the 21st century. So in this context, I'm really delighted that a conference, 3-day conference, is going to deliberate on aspects like cyber governance, water governance, environmental governance, and many other facets of law, governance, and society. And I want to thank Institute of Chinese Studies for partnering with us in this endeavor. And I want to compliment them on their 50th anniversary. In fact, we are observing 10th anniversary this year. And I hope this ICS will go on to achieve more successes on its journey towards Golden Jubilee and Platinum Jubilee. And I want to thank the leadership of ICS, in particular Ambassador Ashok Kanta and the Vice Chairperson, Professor Srimati Chakraborty, in this regard. I want to thank Professor M.P. Singh for delivering a thought-provoking and a profound keynote address and covering a whole gamut of issues. And I want to thank our Vice Chancellor for guiding us in organizing this conference and the painstaking efforts of Mr. Avinash Gadbale and all the student volunteers in putting together this program. The tea will be served over there after this inaugural session, and at 11:30, the conference will move to the other end of the academic block in T1. At 11:30, we will reconvene. Thank you.
Thank you. May I just request the invited guests and speakers for a group photograph quickly here? Tea is served outside, and our volunteers.